and we started to make some real inroads and get much better testimony. And obviously she didn't like it. I mean, the more that you kind of push past people's BS answers, they start to get a little combative back. I had come out of a big firm, and at big firms, when you're a young lawyer, you don't get a whole lot of experience taking depositions and things like that because the partners always do that sort of thing. I'd taken a couple, but I hadn't really gotten into it a whole lot. So once I went out on my own practice, I started to take more depositions. And so we had this case where it was a son who was fighting against his mom's executor. The mom had died. The executor had sold a property that she shouldn't have sold, and she was supposed to give it to the son, and she didn't. And because of that, there was some harm. It wasn't a whole lot of money, but there was this, few tens of thousands of dollars that we were going after. One of the things we had to do is go after the executor's attorney and take her deposition, because the attorney was the one that told the executor to sell the property rather than give it out to my client, which is what was supposed to have happened. So I went to the deposition of this attorney, and it's not unusual, but she was very defensive, very combative. We're obviously coming in and we're questioning the advice that she gave. So she's worried about malpractice. If we win our case, it's possible that the executor would have turned around and sued her for malpractice. So she's very defensive about everything she did. And we kind of had her, we had her in a good case in the sense that the property shouldn't have been sold, and it was. So it's fairly black and white. So I go into the deposition and just asking the questions off of my outline. And when I was a younger attorney, I would actually do an outline and I would actually write out each question, which, nowadays sounds funny to me, but that's what I would do. And I would read each question. And as a young attorney, you're not so good at listening to the answers. And so your whole goal is to get to the next question. And sometimes you don't really hear the answers that are coming up. And that's unfortunate because there can be some good stuff in those answers. But I was going along and it dawned on me that every time I asked her a question about, well, how did you do this or how did you do that? She would say, well, my preference is to do it this way. And she said that a number of times. And it finally dawned on me that, well, that's not really answering the question. If I asked you, what did you do specifically in this case? And you say, well, my preference is to do it this way. You're dodging the question because you're not telling me what you actually did right here in this case. And so once I caught on to the way she was answering, then I started to push back on her. And I'm like, well, I understand that that's your preference. So your preference is to do things the right way. But what did you actually do in this case? Oh, I did it the wrong way. So, my preference is to advise executors not to sell property if that's what the will says. Okay, that might be your preference, but in this case, what did you actually do? And so then I was able to start pushing back on her, and we started to make some real inroads and get much better testimony. And obviously she didn't like it. I mean, the more that you kind of push past people's BS answers, they start to get a little combative back. But there's really nothing she could do about it because the point is that I was entitled to know exactly what you did right here in this case. And I'm not asking you about your preferences. I'm asking about what you actually did. And that was a really important lesson as a young attorney to learn to listen to the answers.